Coming up on the Men at the Movies podcast, we discuss Terminator 2, Judgment Day. When we look at Sarah at the beginning of the movie, she is just as cold and calculating as the Terminators. Both Sarah and the T-800 must learn from John what it means to be human, that life has value, and to choose risk and love over fear. Come with me if you want to live, and let's discover God's truth in this movie.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story, the story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being. Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and joining me once more for this, you picked a good one, and it's not a movie from the 80s, it's actually from the 90s, is my buddy Britt. Hey Britt, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing really well, man. How you doing?
Good. I'm super excited to dive into this movie, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. You get so, I don't want to say jealous, but so many times when I tell you about some podcast I recorded with somebody else, you're like, oh man, I wanted to do this one. Oh, I wanted to do that one. And not that we won't be revisiting some of those in the future, but this is one of those movies that if you put on a short list of movies to discuss of things that we love, especially from our, for us, our late adolescence, our late teens, early 20s, this is a movie that really stands out. This may have been the first DVD I ever bought.
Yeah, no, I did not buy the DVD, but I definitely saw the movie several times. And, I was a fan of the original. So I know Sarah got to do the original. But it came out in 1984, and by the time Judgment Day came out, Arnold Schwarzenegger was a bona fide star.
Right.
Like if his name was on a movie, it was going to make a buttload of money. And even the bad movies Arnold made in those days made a buttload of money, or boatload. one of those two. Both. But in 1984, he was still establishing himself. He had done Conan, he had done a couple things, and it was genius to make him the Terminator. And James Cameron even said, if you read any of those interviews with Arnold, James Cameron said, "I know you won't have enough lines, but you'll be the star of the movie. You'll be the star as the Terminator. You'll be the star." And so they made the Terminator. So by the time 1991 rolls around, it wasn't a huge hit, so they would play the Terminator on TV, on local channels, on Saturdays, and of course, cut out the nudie parts. But they would, and the cussing and some of the stuff. But they showed this movie, and so there were some bona fide fans of the original Terminator because it was a pretty decent movie.
Yeah.
And it had its own complexity. And so by the time this one came out in 1991, man, and Arnold was a big star, and Linda Hamilton to a lesser degree, and James Cameron was kind of a more, he had done Aliens by then, and he had done some different things and really made his name as well. So this movie just worked on all cylinders. And of course, one of the things that made it work, which we'll get into today, are some of those sort of very primal themes, very sort of really basic human themes, which is easy in a sort of Frankenstein-like story with AI. I mean, it's still relevant today, right? AI and what's human, what does it mean to be human, and all that sort of stuff.
Well, I think you just hit on probably the main topic we're going to talk about. What does it mean to be human? Because while you've got two humans in the movie with Sarah and John Connor, I mean, those are sort of the main people. Obviously, Arnold is a robot. The T-1000, also a robot. But by this point, Sarah Connor is also a robot. She is very Terminator-esque, especially when she goes up and tries to kill Dyson. And we'll get into some of that. For me, I was thinking back, I'm pretty sure I saw Terminator 2 before I saw the original.
Right. I think some people did.
Again, grew up not experiencing a lot of those movies. So watching this, it was never a surprise that Arnold wasn't the good. Like, I mean, even watching it today, I was like, the frame up, they just set him up differently where you've got sort of the cheesy music with Arnold, Bad to the Bone comes on when he gets on the motorcycle and stuff. But they're already humanizing him in the beginning. Whereas, Robert Patrick shows up and kills the guy and kills pretty much everybody in his wake, much like Arnold did in the first one. So we come at this from two different perspectives, and I bring my ideas, you bring your ideas, and then during our conversation, God's going to show up and show us something entirely new, which is what happens with pretty consistent regularity. And your big question is, what does it mean to be human? And what I saw as I was watching it was this idea that I heard John Eldredge use last November, where he said, you are perfectly designed for this moment. As it says in Ephesians 2, we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things he planned for us long ago. We are specifically, perfectly designed for the moment we're living in. And this moment is perfectly designed to take us out. Because we have an enemy who knows what we could be and fears it. And you look at Revelation and how the dragon, the Satan, wages war against those who have testimony of Jesus Christ. So we have an enemy who's relentless, who hates our humanity. Which, again, going back to even before the world was created, you've got Lucifer and the angels. And the angels, it seems, I wasn't there, best guess of theology here. It seems as if at some point there was a war in heaven. Lucifer and the angels were cast down. And it was in that aftermath that God created the world. So Satan has a specific hatred of humanity. And I think especially the woman, the Eve, who was the crowning glory of creation. This idea, like, it wasn't, what is it? As God's going along, evening and morning, God said it was good. Let there be light. It was good. Animals, fishes, it was good. Man, it was good. And then wait, it's almost like a record scratch. It is not good for man to be alone. And so God made woman, and it was very good.
Well, it says that about humanity. When he created humanity, they saw that it was very good. We made them male and female. And something back to when you quoted from Ephesians, something that's I've been meditating on from that verse is we are created in Christ Jesus. This wasn't that purpose. That's the new creation. That the new creation is the important part of that. That we were created. We are a workmanship and a masterpiece. But apart from Christ, you are not. Apart from Christ, that's not really. Apart from you find who that is as it's created anew. And you can use all sorts of phrasing for that, going back to the original design, but you find it anew in him, in Christ, in the person of Christ. And just so, as we're going to be talking about male and female a little bit today, masculine, feminine, I just want to throw this out there to people. Something that you said that I think is really important, that the devil attacked the woman first. He attacked her first because she was the linchpin in the plan. Adam could not have multiplied without her. Like he needed her. Like she was the linchpin. But we also have to realize, I think sometimes we get, and we could also go into Revelation, who did the dragon in Revelation attack? The woman who bore the child. Was that Mary? Was it the church? Was it all of it? I don't know. Was it Eve? Was it just representative of the feminine in general, right? And what Christ has set it up so that he needs a bride, right? He doesn't really need her, but he set it up in such a way that he has a bride. Like there's something. And I think sometimes we get some misinformation, or less we allow there to be some misinformation, and maybe we've been taught bad theology, but because so often, and it's legitimate, so often in the Bible, God is referred to as a male. And so we think the female is somehow less of a representative of who God is. But I want to say that's a lie. I just want to put that out there.
Right.
That the masculine isn't any more a representation of the image of God than the feminine is. They are two different representations, and they are actually more alike than they are different. But they are different enough that they have to be together, that they have to work together in order to have life in this world. And that's the model that we've been given. And we can point to things both from the Old Testament and the New Testament to show the feminine side of God. Wisdom. God is wisdom. He's also seen as the Spirit. And a lot of times in the New Testament, the term for breath of life and the Spirit, God's Spirit, is a female term in Greek. Okay. So this idea that God is just masculine and he just kind of like added the feminine just so he could have something pretty is a lie. She has power. She is a powerful force in this world. And if you are unfortunate if you're not like me. I have known some very, very powerful women in my life. I have known some very, very strong women in my life. And I can tell you right now that there have been women and men who have had profound spiritual influence upon my life. Profound. I would not be here today, not just physically because my mom birthed me, but because I'm just saying spiritually, and sometimes in my life, just being a man in general without the influence of women. That doesn't mean they make me a woman, but that means they actually make me a better man by how strong they are as women. And I just want to dignify that as we get into some of this, because who did the Terminator go after first in the first movie? He went after Sarah. What made Sarah special? Nothing. She was a waitress. She was just a normal woman. And I'm here to tell you that a normal woman is powerful. I'm here to tell you that she doesn't have to be Superwoman. She doesn't have to be Wonder Woman. She doesn't have to be a superhero. She didn't have to have special X-Men powers. Just being a woman made her a threat. Just that made her a threat. And I just want to dignify that. So as we get into some of this idea of her, it's not to diminish the role. We're not going to talk about different, maybe sort of aspects of feminine and masculinity to diminish either. I don't think that's God's plan. And so, but I think that's one of the things I love about these movies that I've been seeing over the past couple of years is that so much of the modern entertainment is like, if they're going to have a strong woman, she has to have superpowers. You don't have to have superpowers to be strong. Like, you can just be a strong woman. And that is a superpower, because women can do things men cannot, namely create life. Like, this is so amazing to me. And we should honor that. And to me, and I don't think it doesn't threaten my masculinity to honor that. And I think it's I think it's actual masculinity to honor that. I think it's actual being a strong man to say, no, this is worth honoring. And that's one of the things I love about this movie is that sort of exploration in some of that with Sarah and Kyle in the first movie, and now, the Arnold Terminator in the second one.
Both Arnold Terminator and Sarah Connor show up early in this movie, and they're both robots. They've both just sort of destroyed their heart. I mean, Arnold's a robot. He's got the neural network, right? So he can learn to become more human throughout the movie. Then you've got Sarah, who, because of her fear of the future, because of her fear of John, of knowing what's going to happen, you're all dead. Every one of you. I'm dead. He's dead. We're all dead. So what does it matter what you do if everybody's just dead? And when she goes after Dyson, you see her walking and moving and doing what a Terminator would do. And there's the scene with Arnold and John there in the parking lot, and he makes the decision to go after his mom. When he says, okay, your foster parents are dead. The next move would be to go after your mom, because that's what I would do. I would know you're going to go there. I would try to reacquire my target there. Again, like you were saying, evil targets the feminine. Not because it's weak, not because it's helpless. What I love in the Bible, the word that Jesus uses to describe the Holy Spirit, a third of the Trinity, is the same word that's used in the Old Testament to describe like that helper. The actual source word is more like life mate, life partner, life energy, life force. There's basically, hey, this is where life comes from, as you've been saying, literally and figuratively. And to, again, the honor that we see in the Bible given to women at a time when they were not. Like the first people to see Jesus after the resurrection were women.
Thank you.
Like that doesn't happen in, the first century.
Or any chauvinistic society.
Right.
And the first person Jesus declared himself as the Messiah with was a half-breed woman who had a number of husbands and was living with another guy. And he dignifies her and her heart in a conversation in a way that challenged. I'm just saying, like, the Bible's full of this stuff. And it's just sort of, it's not masculine to dismiss this. It's not, these are put there for men and women to learn from, right? And not just the stories about men aren't just for men, and the stories about, they're there for all of us to learn from. And one of the things you said about Sarah is she's hopeless and she's given into fear. All right. And here's where that's happened. One of the reasons why that's happened is she's experienced grief. She fell in love with a man and he gave himself for her, but there's grief, right? And the other main interaction she had with a masculine figure tried to kill her. And let's just be honest that there are bad men too. And so her response was, I'll be like the bad man.
To survive the world, I have to become like my enemy.
I have to become a machine like the enemy, a soulless machine like the enemy. And that's bad masculinity. That's the toxic stuff we talk about. That's not right. But she's doing it from a place of fear and hopelessness, which is why she says, you're all gonna die. you're all dead. But that's where it's coming from. And it's, again, I don't know how much James Cameron thought this deeply, but she's in bondage. She's literally in bondage at the beginning of the movie. That fear and that hopelessness has placed her in bondage. That's not freedom. This, I just have to survive. It's everyone's out to get me. That paranoia, that fear, that hopelessness places us in bondage. So now we've got the Terminator, the Arnold character, who's now a hero, and now he's dealing with John Connor, who's a child, and the heart of a child says, no, that's not how you're supposed to be.
Jesus, you were gonna kill that guy.
Of course, I'm a Terminator.
Listen to me very carefully, okay? You're not a Terminator anymore, all right? You got that? You just can't go around killing people.
Why?
What do you mean, why? 'Cause you can't.
Why?
Because you just can't, okay? Trust me on this.
He's like a 2-year-old. Why?
Well, and you don't get this, you don't really get the answer to the why until later in the movie, which is, because John doesn't even understand it, but it's his conscience working in his heart. A machine doesn't have a soul, doesn't have a conscience. And biblically speaking, the conscience is a sacred thing. Even God will not go against your conscience. Even God will not force your conscience. He will appeal to you. He will woo you. He will reason with you. He will reveal himself to you, but he will not force you to go against your conscience. He won't do it. And so something within John responds. You can't do that. He may not even know why, but the conscience says, no, life has value. Machines do not think this way. Sarah, in her machine-like state, does not think that life it has inherent value.
Everything's a mean to an end for her, right?
It's transactional.
Right. And even right before John was saying that, he's like, we started in Nicaragua. We went places. Basically, anybody that my mom would think would teach me stuff so that I could become this great war leader, she would hook up with so she could use them, get their knowledge, and then leave them in the dust.
Right.
Again, manipulative, soulless, machine-like life.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what can I get out of this relationship? Once I've used it up, moving right along. Like every bad guy in every movie, right?
Right.
And the interesting thing is, what the Terminator says is, negative. We're not going to go save your mom. That's the most likely place the T-1000 is going to be. This puts you at a higher risk. We're not going to do it because my primary objective is rescuing you. But what's the point in rescuing John if he becomes a machine in the meantime? Exactly. If he makes the decision, my life is worth more than my mom's, I'm going to choose not to try to rescue her. Who does he become if he makes that choice? Again, going back to that idea, the future is not set. No fate but what we make. What future is John setting if he decides to save his own skin and leave his mom out to dry?
Right. And what kind of leader will he be? Like the whole thing is we need to save you so you can be a leader. But what kind of leader are you? What is the point? You need to survive. You're chosen. And look, guys, we need to tell our kids they're chosen, that they have a future. I'm just telling you, not the chosen one. Like there's only one chosen one, that's Jesus. But I mean, but we need to tell our children that I believe in your future because I believe that you have a future and it's a good one. And I'm going to invest in who you are right now in a way that sees your future. And that's what they keep doing with John. And yet, what kind of future is it going to be, like you're saying, with the character? And so what John does with the Terminator, the original, what T-101 or whatever he is, the original.
Uncle Bob.
He does two things in that scene. And you cut out before, there was another part. First, he says, don't kill. And then he makes them commit.
Yeah.
He says, I want you to swear or promise or whatever. I want you to commit to it. All right. Now I want you to think about this. This is important for true masculinity. Masculinity knows I have the power to hurt people. But true masculinity also says I will not hurt people. I will know I have the power to hurt people, but I will refuse to hurt people. I will instead protect I will value life. I will use my strength to value life, not to take it. And I will commit to that. It's not just enough to say it. You have to make a heart commitment. No, I will not do this. I will commit. And I'm telling you guys, as dads, as men, we need more men to make this commitment, because this is why men bolt. This is why men leave. Either because they have hurt people or they want to hurt people, which is human, right? Because you get angry, right? That's just humanity. And so they feel powerless, they feel helpless, and so they bolt. But man, we've said it before on this podcast, it's the ones that stick around. It's the ones that hang around and make the commitment. No, I'm going to stick with this, and I'm going to do what's right, and I'm going to protect. I'm going to use my strength to support, to protect, to not hurt, but to value life. I'm going to do all that, and I'm going to make a commitment to that. Now, this is just part of what he learns.
Well, that idea, like, we've been given a strength. We have a strength. And in so many situations on the news, we see of men using that strength to get what they want, to manipulate others, to use others. And we see this impact. In this movie, in this scene I'm about to set up, we actually don't see it. Sarah's going to tell us what has happened. So they're on the run. She trusts the Terminator now. And you see this really cool conversation between John and Uncle Bob, the name he gives Arnold's Terminator, because really there's two Terminators. How are we going to tell the difference? And they're even talking about how to cry. Why do you cry?
Mm-hmm.
And he's showing them how to do the high five stuff. And Sarah is watching them interact. He's watching John and Uncle Bob there interact. And she has these thoughts. She thinks, I can leave and go try to kill Dyson because he's in safe hands. But what I want to hit here is what she's describing about the strength of the Terminator reflects the traumatic life that she's been through under the abuse of the men that she's been engaged with.
Watching John with the machine, it was suddenly so clear. The Terminator would never stop. It would never leave him. And it would never hurt him, never shout at him or get drunk and hit him or say it was too busy to spend time with him. It would always be there, and it would die to protect him. Of all the would-be fathers who came and went over the years, this machine, was the only one who measured up. In an insane world, it was the sanest choice.
And think of that, like the indictment on us as men. This machine is going to be a better father because he's not going to do all these things that the other guys either did or may have done. Because who one of us hasn't yelled at our kids?
Right.
Said we're too busy to spend time with them. Failed to protect. The list goes on and as she reveals the trauma that she's faced. Like you said, and part of her transformation is seeing this face of a person that hunted her in the first movie, now being the one that she's sort of choosing to parent John through this. But when you look at the women in our lives, how many of them would say that's been their experience of masculinity?
Mm-hmm.
I saw somebody on Facebook earlier this week. She reposted something. I don't know where it came from, and I don't spend that much time on Facebook, so it stuck out to me. But she said men should have a curfew so that women could take a walk after dark. And how many women feel that way? That the world would be a safer place if it was just them and machines. You can't deny it. My wife doesn't go out walking after dark.
Right.
But, and I'm not sure what I'm trying to exactly say, but the fact that start of acknowledging that this is the experience of many women, helping to understand that this is what made them who they are today.
Well, it's contributed to it at the very least. And but part of it is our reaction to it. Part of it is because here's what happens is, so the enemy not only tries to place, let's say, one man, okay? Because Sarah's experience was with one man. And he wasn't really even a man. I mean, it was one guy who abused her. So she kept herself closed off from these other guys. She's the one who refused to have a connection. And her grief and all. So that was her experience, but it wasn't every guy in the world. And but here's what happens is, so the enemy sends these people to us, one pastor who is corrupt, right? He sends one man who is abusive. They send one woman who is toxic and cheats on us and leaves us, or as men or whatever, right? Sends one person like this. And then the same enemy lies to us and says, see, you can't trust any men now.
The one guy, the one orderly who licked her face in the state hospital means that all the people,
all
like that doctor, for as kind of a bumbling idiot they made him look, like he actually, I think, wants to help Sarah.
Oh, the doctor, the professor, yeah.
Even though, like, because she's exhibiting all the signs of crazy, yeah. Right?
But here's the thing, and I wrote this down. So at one point she has a choice, right? And they use a line from the first movie, because in the first movie, Kyle comes to her and she's being chased by the original Terminator, and he says, "Come with me if you want to live," right? And so in this one,
come with me if you want to live.
She has to choose to trust this masculine, because if she doesn't, see, here's the thing, here's the lie, here's where the lie gets you. If you don't trust this masculine, there's something worse after it. There's something worse will hurt you. There's actually something worse. If you can't learn to partner with masculinity, if you try to control it, because here's what fear does, and I've seen it and it happens a lot in women. It happens in men too. But fear leads us to try to control the situation. So her being closed off, like she wants to control it. If he's a machine and he's programmed and I can trust that he has no free agency, he doesn't get to make a choice. I can trust that guy. Like, I want you to think about this. But that's all coming from woundedness. That's all coming from fear. That's all coming from lies. What she had, but she treats John the same way. Don't come after me. She's trying to control him now. You stay here. You go here. But control doesn't work. That's not freedom. You don't get to a place of hope and freedom by trying to control everything. You have to surrender to and work with people, because you can't. She was trying to take away John's conscience too. No, I have to save my mom. No, you can't go. You can't live by your own choices either. Like, see what I'm saying? Like, that's where fear comes from. That's where tyranny comes from. That's tyranny. That's where tyranny comes from, is if we don't do this, people will hurt other people. Well, now you're hurting other people and you've just created a soulless society out of fear. And that's what the machines want. And so for Sarah, she has to learn not only how not to live like a machine herself, but how not to treat other people like machines either. And by the end, she does, right? I mean, we've seen the movie, because there's no hope in that. And, you know, all the stuff with the end of fate, and maybe we make our own future and all that sort of stuff. It's unsure, but at least it's not based off of fear, if that makes sense.
Right. And in that scene, I'm going to play the clip here in just a second that you were describing. They finally sort of escape the T-1000, who is super interesting. Robert Patrick actually took lessons on how to run really fast without breathing hard.
I know, man.
So that he could play that performance. It was awesome. They had to increase the speed on the bike because he could run faster than the little bike that he was escaping from. So they finally escape. They're in the car, and John's in the backseat. She turns around and says, "Come here." John responds as if she's going to embrace him. And all she's doing is checking for injuries. And he responds, he draws back. He's like, "I told you I was fine." And then she goes into this reprimand for why he should not have come to save her.
John, it was stupid of you to go there. God damn it, you have to be smarter than that. You almost got yourself killed. What were you thinking? You cannot risk yourself even for me. Do you understand? You're too important. Do you understand?
But I had to get you out of that place. I'm sorry.
I didn't need your help. I can take care of myself.
And I want to go back to Genesis 3. Again, the results of the fall, because according to the creation ideology, according to how God planned it, men and women live together in wholehearted unity and partnership. Right. And Morgan and Sherry Snyder go into this really incredible series called The Meta-Narrative of Feminine Love, about what it looks like for wholehearted masculinity and femininity to come in contact with each other. But I wanted to look at Genesis 3, sort of the results of the fall. And in verse 16, it says, it talks about pregnancy, and that's sort of the thing we focus on. But it also says, "You will desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you." Like that tension that we see between Sarah and every other dude in the movie, even John, she desires to control him because he's dangerous, because he's valuable, because she's afraid, because all these things. But it says, "But he will rule over you." And again, I actually sort of, that's a twofold sort of result of the fall, because not only do we see he will rule over you, but it's sort of as a result of the fall, there will be men who will try to dominate, who will manipulate, who will use you. You will try to control them, but they're going to take advantage of you. In both of those, like, it's not just a curse on the woman, but a curse on the man as well.
It's a twofold curse. It's a curse of division. They were meant to be unified. Yeah. And now it's a curse of division. You were created and designed.
A fight for control.
Yeah. And look, man, I'm telling you, again, I was in education. I was a psychology major. Like I've got a background in a lot of this stuff and philosophy, and I'm not an expert, but a large part of modern, let's say, philosophy is a philosophy of power. Who has power? That's who, and if you have power, then you abuse it. So it's all, so there's a lot going on with that. But my point is that is the curse. What they're describing in some of those, and I don't think they're describing it very well, to be honest. But what they're describing is a result of the curse. The curse is who has power over who. That's not redemption. Redemption says, how can we work together? How can we be unified? How can we, and not, because men try to control too. Because, okay, here's what happens. Are you ready for the cycle? You know the cycle. Well, just because you've been married long enough, and I know you've been divorced too, so you probably know it even probably better than me in some ways. But I'm just saying, right? I mean, but for us to know it, right? helps us to know how to get out of it when we're in it and be like, oh, wait a minute, we don't want to be here. But the cycle is, it can start either way. She tries to control because she's trying to force him to love her. She wants to feel safe. That's what she wants. But he wants to feel respected. And he doesn't feel respected when she's telling him what to do. So he tries to control her and rule over her to force himself to be respected. Well, she doesn't feel safe. So she tries, do you see? Well, it just keeps happening. And whoever starts it,
Right.
the enemy does ultimately. But I mean, like, whoever starts it, they're trying to get what they want, but through the wrong means. That's the curse. You think you're going to feel, but because here's the lie. Even if I can force her to respect me, I won't feel respected because she's not doing it in her own free will. Even if I force him to protect me and love me, I won't really feel loved and protected because I had to do it.
Because we don't want a robot.
We don't want good. There you go. We don't want a robot. What he wanted, what John wanted, was a mother who held him. This is what he wanted.
Yep.
He didn't want a mother who killed for him. Although she could, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, she fought the Terminator guy at the end. I mean, there's nothing wrong with stepping up as a woman and a man and fighting together for children. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean she can't fight, but what he wanted from her was a hug. He wanted softness. He wanted connection from her. And she, because of her fear, she couldn't give it to him. And I'm telling you, man, the opposite of faith is fear, man. And she says, don't risk yourself. But I'm telling you, if we're going to have the life, the wholehearted life we're talking about, we have to take risks. We have to say, I can't force you to do this, but here's what I want. My wife told me when we early on in our marriage, and we worked through a lot of it, right? But she admitted to me that she had trouble trusting anyone. And that there were times she wouldn't tell me what she needed, what she felt she needed, because she was afraid I would not give it to her. She didn't want to risk saying, I need this, and for me to go, well, I can't give that to you. Which ultimately could happen. I mean, even if I were just a perfect human, I'm still human, don't have everything, right? I can't do everything. But my point is we had to work through some of that. She had to be willing to be vulnerable and risk enough. And I'm just telling you, man, if we don't get to this place, we're doomed as a society. I'm just telling you, man, like what's if we don't learn how to be human.
Now you're starting to sound like Sarah. You're dead. I'm dead. He's dead. We're all dead.
If we don't stop acting out of fear, and start acting out of love, which does not seek control, but seeks to empower and give freedom and work together. Only Christ can do this. Only God can teach us this. You know why? Because there are three people in one, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. None of them, they all submit to one another in love. All of them. There's no force involved. And he wants to renew my heart and your heart and the hearts of the people around us as we deal with our kids and our wives and our husbands and our families. And he wants to heal that heart so we can live that way. And it's hard, man. It's hard when you have a son who you see going off a cliff and you want to shake him and stop him. But sometimes you got to love him enough to say, I love you, but I don't see that working for you, but I can't stop you. If that's your choice, that's what you're going to do. And I can pray for him that God work on his heart, that God orchestrate things, that God calls him, and does his work. And if I know I'm not strong enough, but he's, like you said before, when we were praying before we started, God loves my kids more than I do. He's even more sorrowful that they're going down the wrong path than I am. Right? And so that can bring God and I closer. It may not be how I wanted to get closer to God.
But it's interesting because in that scenario, you have to stop trying to control God, right? Because we was like, oh, God, if you loved me, my kids wouldn't be going off the rails.
I gave God deadlines. I'm not supposed to give him deadlines?
Right.
Ultimatums? I'm not supposed to give God ultimatums?
That's not how it works. And what we see in the culmination, the transformational point of the movie was when Sarah goes to kill Dyson. And she moves like a Terminator. It's so well done.
Yes, it is.
And you see it lines up, and who intervenes but Dyson's kid? Like, he's dead if the remote, she didn't hesitate pulling the trigger. It was the car that moved him out of the way. They run, she shows up, bullet, gun in his face as the little boy is saying, don't hurt my daddy, don't hurt my daddy. And she realizes in that moment who she has become. And what is it worth? What is the cost? Really, I think more of the question is, what does it cost? The cost of our decisions.
Right.
Yes, safety. She would prevent the apocalypse that she sees coming. But what does she lose in the process?
Right.
And she's sitting there, shocked, crying. The family's there. John and Uncle Bob show up. And what does she say? You came to stop me. I love you. Like, she is thankful he came after her. Even though, yes, it puts them in harm's way. And then he intervenes. You know, they sort of show truth to Dyson, which is so interesting. There's a song I've been listening to called Watchmen by Josh Garrels. And there's a line on there that truth is looking stranger than the lies. Like, what Sarah was seeing was the truth of the future. The fact was this dude who's made of liquid metals hunting them. And this other Terminator who looks exactly like the guy that tried to kill her, in the first movie is now the protector, and she wants him to be the father to her son, which is a weird thing. But the truth is stranger than the lies. Truth is looking stranger to the lies. The stuff that we believe looks stranger than the lies that we hear. The truth that we talk about, Britt, it looks strange to say, no, both can be true. We're fallen individuals. These things have happened. I have friends whose wives have been raped, who've undergone different sorts of sexual assault, who've just been assaulted, been abused by their fathers. There is no shortage of trauma done by men to women in the world. The lie is, you need to become Sarah Connor. You need to get stronger. You need to use them before they can use you. Your desire will be to control them. And then you'll wonder why nobody will protect you. I'm not saying you have to be a damsel in distress or anything like that. But when you've pushed everyone away, it's the ones who keep coming back. And the truth is that you are more than who you have thought yourself to be. You are more than your trauma. You are more than your wounds. And it's only through the power of Jesus Christ that we can get back to that creation mandate, that creation ideal that's in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 before Genesis 3 happens, to see this is the image that God had intended for men and women to partner, to work together, to be one, to open yourself up and allow the other person access to hurt you. Like you said, your wife, it's like, I'm afraid to tell you this because now I've given you power.
Right.
You know how to hurt me. And it goes both ways. The reality is it's two-sided.
It is.
No one in this world can hurt me more than my wife.
Absolutely.
And there's been times that we've had conversations that have escalated. Things have gotten out of hand. We try to control each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
This idea that I've been holding on to lately is I don't need to defend myself, which I feel like defending myself on a fairly regular basis. But when something happens, when I get misunderstood, when I get told this is the impact, the other night, my wife said, I feel like you're always in a bad mood. It's good to see you in a good mood because you're often in a bad mood, or you've been frustrated a lot lately. I'm like, I don't feel like I have been. And then she's like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And on the one hand, I feel like I want to get defensive and say, well, this is why this blah, blah, On the other, it's like she's showing me a mirror. I think I look a certain way. She shows me a mirror that says, this is how you really look. And to receive the mirror, and to ask, is this the person I want to be? Do I want to become someone who will shoot somebody in front of their kid and wife? I mean, hopefully not that dramatic, but do I want to be someone that she's like, oh, wow, you in a good mood is fairly rare. Like that idea of who do I want to be? Am I it? Is this the human? Is this the masculine, the expression of masculinity of God? Is this how it wants to be expressed? And if you really want to know, guys, sit down with your wife, preferably no kids around, and say, what's the impact of living with me as your husband? With no response, no explanation, no defensiveness, to say, wow, that's what it's like. I'm really sorry. Like I went like super deep. I was like, oh man, that sucks. I'm terrible at this. Like she, you don't want to do that either because like my wife says, like, I'm sorry I said anything. It's like, I need to know these things even if I don't like knowing it. Because I need to know my impact on the people who I care most about.
Well, and so just to go back to the movie.
What? We're talking about a movie?
No, I know. No, but it goes right to your point. What was the other option besides killing the man in front of his child and becoming the Terminator herself, which horrified her? What was the other option? Do nothing? No. The other option was to sit the man down like he's a human being and tell him something he may not want to know, but he needs to know. See, that was the option all along, to treat him like not, because she was treating him like a machine. He has no power over himself. He's going to do this. But now but see, that's why it's God's love to convict us. The Holy Spirit convicts the world of sin, righteousness, and the judgment to come. Why? So we can change. That's why it's God's love to do that. And no one likes it. He didn't like hearing what was going to happen in the future. And he needed evidence. So, Uncle Bob, took off his arm, the flesh arm, and showed him. But when he realized it, he said, obviously, I'm done with that. I can't do that anymore.
He repented.
He listened to reason. Now, maybe he could have been an evil guy, but that's a risk. That was a risk to tell him this, to expose the truth to him and leave it up to him. And then they said, no, look, it's not enough that you won't do it, but you have to help us destroy it. Now he has a choice, now his choice wasn't to do nothing either. His choice was to, okay, I'm going to help you stop this from happening in the future. Not to kill people. He wasn't going to kill. He was just going to destroy this so that it doesn't happen in the future. And that's what you were saying. Like, are you telling your wife? Are you saying, look, guys, if you're not willing to sit down with one another and risk, either being hurt or hurting each other, but to try to give each other the benefit of the doubt that I know you love me, so I'm going to risk this, even though I don't know how this is going to play out. But I want,
Right.
and obviously there are ways to communicate that helps this not happening. But ultimately, if you've got a difficult conversation, it's not going to be fun, right? But yet, what's at the other side of that is you dignifying the other person, that they get to make a choice. You don't have to do anything, but I'm asking you, please don't do this anymore. That hurts me when you say it that way. Or I would like more of this in the future, or whatever it might be. Because 99 times out of 100, if my wife says, I really like this, she's not asking me for $1 billion that I don't have. Usually it's like, right? I mean, I want more. Let's spend more time together, right? But criticism comes out of control, right? And that's what Sarah did in the car. You're so stupid to do this. Yeah, see, we got to. That's not starting. That's going to start the cycle that I was talking about earlier. Instead of risking and the opposite of the curse. If the curse is trying to take power, the opposite of the curse is giving it. Like you said, I'm giving you power to hurt me, and I'm trusting you that you will keep it safe. And that goes for men too, man. Men, I'm just telling you, they can feel really disrespected, and that's how they feel loved, right? So they do not want to hear, right? But you got to put yourself out there and say, like you said, how have I failed? I want to do better, right? And again, with Christ, we can go back to him with a healed heart, and he says, look, I love you. God doesn't condemn us. He's going to empower us to make changes, right? And so, I'm kind of babbling there, but that was the difference in the movie of between shooting him in the face to stop him, or sitting down with him and treating him like a human being and helping him understand what his actions were going to do in the future. And that's love. That's just love, man. That's what God does with me. I don't know if I ever told you this story. I may have shared it on this podcast, but there's cheating that happened in my family, in my father and my grandfather. There was a line, okay? There's a line of not being faithful. And I was very dead set that not to do this. And when my wife and I were first married, first 6 months or so, I was struggling with pornography. And I remember where I was standing. I was standing on the stoop of our apartment, and God said, if you don't stop this, you will cheat on your wife. He didn't say you might. He said you will. And I went, holy crap. I didn't like hearing it, but thank God he did. Right? There's so much redemption available to us if we participate in the love of God in each other's lives. And they may not respond the way we want them to, but the other option is definitely not going to get us what we want. That's all I got to say.
Right. And what we see at the end of the movie is that redemptive story where both Sarah and Uncle Bob, Arnold's Terminator, are fighting against the common enemy.
Right.
To rescue John.
Right.
They are working together to defeat the enemy. It takes both of them to achieve victory. And that's what it'll take in our lives too.
Good.
And it is uncertain. As they said, the future looks like a dark highway. I don't know where it's going to lead. And if you choose to go that highway alone in the dark, still trying to find your own way, then it's going to be a struggle. But when you say in those moments, these traumatic, awful things have happened to me, could be 20 years ago, it could be 20 days ago, could be 20 minutes ago.
Good.
These things have happened. and invite Jesus in, say, Jesus, come into this because this feels terrible. This was terrible. Jesus, defend me. Jesus, be my advocate. I release everything to you, which is really hard. And the greater the trauma, the harder it is. But that's also like the greater the trauma, the bigger the prison and the bigger the freedom that we could experience to become the type of people who can rescue and change the world, because through their efforts, they did change the future.
Yeah. Because
the future is not set. It's decided by our decisions today.
Amen.
This has been Paul McDonald and Britt Mooney talking about Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you join us next time here on the Men at the Movies podcast.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?